doing a thing on called 25 for 25 or something, which is Style Weekly used to do this thing called Top 40 Under 40.
Oh yeah, or Forbes.
It's
Are you talking about Forbes 40 Under 40?
Probably, but
Okay.
the Style Weekly also did it.
Okay.
Which was Top 40 Richmond people under 40, local
I think I've seen
younger
that.
people in any field.
Okay.
Like this person is
It has to
doing,
be younger people?
well, people under 40.
Oh.
Yeah,
Okay.
that was the Style Weekly
I
thing.
got you.
Which Style Weekly still functions as a digital thing. But anyway, they're doing a 25 for 25 thing. So I've got a friend who was featured in that thing. She does a thing where every Friday she has a table in her front yard in the fan, and every Friday she's made it known, I'm going to be eating lunch at this table. Anyone can come join me. And she's met people from all over the city, all over the country, all around the world, new people newly moved to Richmond, longtime Richmonders, visitors from other cities or from abroad, just a random assortment of people, and people make all kinds of connections, and it's really fostered a great sense of community relationships. And
so this is just about conversation.
Yeah, let's just talk, and she provides water, and was just bring your lunch and meet somebody for an hour and whatever. Anyway, she was featured in that thing. So it's people who are doing interesting things in the community, of which you are one, I think.
Thank you.
So that's the Richmonder.
We can get started if
great. Yeah,
if that works
go.
for you.
Sure.
Okay.
Sorry.
So I was just gonna start off asking about your Germany trip.
Okay.
How did that go?
It was great.
It was good.
Kristen Macklin, who's our German teacher, this is her second year doing it at Maggie Walker. She did it previously when she taught at Mills Godwin. She has a relationship with a school in Munich, outside Munich, and it's every 2 years she does this exchange. And so this spring, probably 15 or 20 German students from the school outside Munich came to Richmond and visited Maggie Walker for maybe 2 weeks, and they came to classes. They went to Jamestown and Charlottesville and did little local excursions, lived with families, and then a lot of those Maggie Walker host kids went to Germany this summer, and I was a chaperone on the trip, as you know, and my daughter Piper was also on the trip. And it was fantastic. We spent 4 days in Berlin, and then 12 in Munich.
Do they have different? I want to say Can you evidently see the different cultures in each of these regions?
Yes.
When you travel?
Yes. So Berlin is farther north.
Okay.
It's really far north. I couldn't believe it when it was staying really late, even later than I would have expected. And I looked on a map, and it's north of Calgary.
Oh, I'm not familiar with Calgary though.
Calgary's, in Alberta, and it's north of every U.S. state except for Alaska and Maine or something. I mean, it's not even right on the border. It's up there. Anyway, Berlin, I had no idea how far northern Germany was, and it was a real difference in the length of the days. Also, Berlin is artsy and funky and kind of cutting edge and a little grimy, a little edgy.
Okay.
But a lot of culture, a lot of it's pretty cosmopolitan. There's a big Turkish population there, so there are a lot of doner kebab places, which was great.
Yeah.
But in Munich's much farther south. It was 3.5 hours by train on a fast train.
Oh wow.
And southern Germany, Bavaria, where Munich is pretty conservative and traditional in a lot of ways. When you think of maybe stereotypical German dress, you might think of men in lederhosen and women in dirndls, which are these dresses.
I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
And people in Bavaria often wear those. They dress that way on Sundays. It's not even a dressing up for a thing. It's just that's their Sunday dress. And
is it certain people or just the entire?
Just a lot of people.
Okay.
And young and old. I went to a beer garden the day I got to Munich. It was on Sunday, and we walked in the beer garden, and there's an Umpa band playing, and people walking around with giant beer steins, and people wearing lederhosen and dirndls. And I was
wow.
Is this? I mean, I really thought some of them worked there and were kind of creating atmosphere, but I was told no, those are just
the customers,
regular people.
Wow.
It was incredible. So, so Bavaria is more traditional. I've only studied German for a few months, so my German's not great, but I learned from my hosts some things about linguistic differences that they could hear. So like the host I stayed with, the husband is from Berlin and the wife is from Munich, so they're very different in that sense. I mean,
Did you and Piper stay with the same host family?
No, she stayed with a different family.
Okay.
Just trying to give her some autonomy. But I think to Americans, those two people I stayed with, that couple, they're both just Germans and they speak German. But to them, they could really hear the difference in each other's speech, and they would sometimes have to like modify their speech to be understood locally. Like when she went up north, or when he sometimes was in Bavaria, he would have to modify his speech. Just little things.
Yeah.
And again, as I'm not the German teacher, so I can't really explain.
I mean,
what
if you
that's all
didn't
about.
have those modifications, would it be harder to understand?
I mean, I think they'd basically understand each other, but there would be some quirks of vocabulary and pronunciation that would make them kind of
Be like,
a little bit. Maybe like if you lived in New England and went to the deep south, you might have a little trouble initially.
Yeah.
But
I mean, that's more in culture. I feel like you wouldn't. I mean, in America, you don't really I mean, English is English. I mean, there's not like, other than certain words, it's not like, I guess, slang.
Well, there are accents.
Yeah.
There are regionalisms. Like different people in different parts of the country call things by like soda is pop and stuff like that. Like there are things like that.
Yeah.
But for the most part, you're not going to really have trouble understanding. I think in Germany the differences were greater than that, but still not as distinct as like what I've heard about Italy. Yeah. About how different regions of Italy have very different. I guess you could use the word dialects. Yeah. Anyway, so to answer your question, yes, there were differences. I preferred Munich just because it was a city, but it felt like, I don't know, maybe just a very big town. Yeah. You know, like it was really easy to get around, very walkable. Like Berlin has a lot of really big, impressive government buildings and like historic edifices, and Munich certainly has plenty of gorgeous architecture, but it was more accessible. I thought just like.
Was it more of a tourist destination?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
They both were, but yes, Munich was also less cosmopolitan, so a lot fewer doner kebab places. Okay. And just it seemed less sort of ethnically heterogeneous than Berlin. And North. Okay. But anyway, so we had a really great trip. The students we were hosted by the kids from the school outside Munich. They went to some classes. We did a lot of great excursions. We really saw Munich very well, had a lot of great food, and the trip was very successful. And there were any problems were minimal. You know, no serious illnesses or injuries. Or, and the kids got along really well with their host kids. And so then after that trip, the students went home with the German teacher, and my wife came out and joined us, and Piper and my wife and I traveled around Germany and Switzerland for another 2.5 weeks.
Oh, that's amazing.
So we saw a lot of things.
Did you guys do anything special?
Yeah, we started in Munich, then we went to Heidelberg. Okay. Then we went down to the Black Forest. Then we went into western Switzerland, Bern, like Interlaken area, and Geneva. Okay. And so
my brother lived in Geneva for like, I want to say 3 months, or maybe 6 months. Okay. And he did some like medicine stuff there. Yeah. But that's my only interaction to Europe. So that's one of the stops on the list for sure.
If you go to, based on my experience, if you go to one place in Switzerland, I'd recommend Bern, the capital, because it's a smaller medieval city, gorgeous architecture, really easy to walk around the downtown, very accessible. There are all these shopping streets, and outside the shops there are these, arcades. You know what those are, which are like roofs outside the stores, but with like these archways, like open archways. It feels kind of Italian, sort of.
Is it like the store on the bottom, house on the top type
No,
thing?
it's normally you'd be walking down a street and you go window shopping and you're outside. Yeah. But here it's as if they extended the roof over what would be the sidewalk. Oh. And so you're totally covered, but then the space between that sidewalk and the street is these open archways. Okay. So it could be a rainy, miserable day, and you can go window shopping for blocks and blocks and blocks, and you're totally covered. Oh, wow.
And this is Bern? You said
Bern, yeah. Bern is called Bern because the legend has it that when whoever founded the city, he killed a bear in that spot. And so ever since they've kept bears in the city. And so we were there. We saw the 3 bears who lived there, and it was really great.
What do you mean keep the bears?
Like there's like an open, sort of like the National Zoo in DC.
Okay.
There's like a bear enclosure, and it's like a teeny tiny zoo just for the bears.
Wow.
And you can go see the bears, and it's fantastic.
Oh wow. Mr. White, when are we bringing back the Russian trip?
I would love to. I mean, as soon as it's okay for Americans to go to Russia.
Yeah, that's fair.
I have been researching trying to take kids elsewhere that is like Russia adjacent.
Mm-hmm.
Candidates include Latvia, Moldova, and Central Asia, like Kyrgyzstan, Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan.
Yeah.
So there's a chance this next summer I might go to Central Asia to explore that area as a possibility.
By yourself, not with students.
By myself through a program that takes American teachers there, and I might do that and see if I can sort of establish some relationships that will allow me to bring students there, preferably with a homestay, preferably under the auspices of some kind of school.
Yeah.
I don't know.
How did you do it before? Did you work with a school in Russia?
Yes. So in the mid-90s, when I was in grad school at UVA, I got hired to lead a group of American high school students to Russia for like a month-long trip. And then that was like funded by some federal program that lasted 3 years. 2 of those years I was like a chaperone and translator on those trips. And those trips were hosted by a school in Rostov-na-Donu, and the teacher / administrator who kind of ran that thing on that side, he and I became really good friends. And so then after that program ended, and then I eventually became a full-time teacher, I started taking my own kids on a version of that trip with him.
Okay.
And so that trip involved, getting my kids to Russia, and then we'd be met usually in St. Petersburg by that teacher and other teachers and their students. And then together we would tour St. Petersburg, Moscow, the Golden Ring, which are historic cities around Moscow, old, like medieval cities. And then go to Rostov-na-Donu down by the Black Sea, where those kids would then become our hosts, and we'd have homestays.
Okay.
And we'd take like informal classes at their local school and do all kinds of excursions. And so that's something like the trips that I chaperoned back in the 90s. And so he and I continued that model between 2001 and 2019.
Okay.
I did it about every other year.
Yeah.
And so, ideally, we could go to Russia next year, and I would take students, and we just revive that model. But that's probably not going to happen anytime soon.
Right. That's fair.
So,
I mean, from the pictures that I saw the PowerPoints you had in class, it seemed like a very fun program.
Yeah.
And I guess, the thing that I miss most about learning a language and being able to get immersed into it. So I guess my next question is, how did the students that you took react to Russia and like the environment compared to what they learned of it?
I've obviously been to Russia many times, so I tried to prepare them the best I could.
Right.
And I prepared them by explaining things like, obviously a lot of things you'll see and hear and eat are weird, right? They're not what we would expect.
Right.
All the way from the bathrooms to the way meals are served.
I'm not sure if this was the right thing I'm thinking about, but you can't drink the water in Russia. Was that something you said? So
that I had always been told that from my first trip to Russia back in 1990, and that on that first trip, somebody in our group got really, really sick. Oh. And our conclusion was that it was because he drank the water. Okay. And then in recent years, I found out that might not have been the cause. Who knows? But he had like a terrible, like a gastrointestinal problem, which would seem like probably something.
It could be food too.
It could have been. Gastrointestinal. Anyway, we were pretty sure he was going to die. He didn't die, but but basically, so that was my teaching, because in St. Petersburg. So those trips were in Leningrad and then St. Petersburg, and it's true that like historically back in those days, the water there wasn't great for foreigners. Like locals could drink it because their systems were used to it, but it would often give us problems. So I had always been taught and practiced never drinking the water, and so I told my students that for years and years and years. And then maybe by about 2015, my students told me, Mr. White, you've told us this, but we just drank the water. And so, and no one seemed to have gotten sick. So then on my last couple trips to Russia, I tried like brushing my teeth first. And that was because I used to brush my teeth with bottled water for years and years. Yeah. Anyway, and I tried brushing my teeth, and that was fine. And then I just like braved it and drank some water, and it was fine.
Okay.
So
did it taste different?
Yeah, it's like hard water.
Yeah.
And it's it tastes kind of minerally or metallic, kind of a little bit. I don't know.
Like tap water?
Yeah, but not tap water that you really want to drink a lot.
Okay, that's right.
Maybe like water that's been in a metal bottle that you've had go for hiking or something.
Oh,
you know?
okay, yeah.
Anyway, I don't know where we were on the question, but
just like your students' reaction.
Yeah, so I prepare them. All right, so I prepare them for things, and then so some things they knew about, but then they were often sort of stymied by things like when you're crossing a street, even if you have the walk sign, sometimes cars will just look like they're aiming for you, but then they'll always stop, but they won't brake slowly. They'll and so you're crossing the street and you think that guy's gonna
hit you,
they're
but
not
like
gonna
you're fine.
that
Okay.
kind of thing. So little behavioral things like that. I think one of the things about Russia is that like nothing works like you think it's going to, and nothing turns out like you planned, but everything turns out okay. So like we could have a plan for a day, and Americans love to hear we're going to wake up at this time, breakfast is at 8:30, you're going to meet the bus at 9:30, and then we're going to do this, and they want to see a schedule. That schedule will never happen that way because something will happen. But Russians just sort of accept that and understand that, and if a Russian invited you over for dinner at 6 p.m. and you showed up at like 7, they would, like in America, you'd be alarmed and concerned, and you'd figure, well, I guess she's not coming. In Russia, they get it. They understand that there are always delays and problems and things break down. In the old days, you could get on a bus that's the route and time that you take every day, and then that day the bus driver decides, I'm stopping here, that's it. And so he'd let you off maybe between stop. Like, those things just happen.
So there's just no schedule?
I mean, there's a schedule, but it gets violated all the time. So Russians are they understand that kind of thing's going to happen, and they're not as insistent on punctuality and predictability as Americans are.
So how does like a school day work?
Well, I think a school day is
more
because you're
regular.
dealing with children. But like generally anything that involves like going anywhere or anything where you're opening up those variables of like travel, transportation, whatever.
Well, I mean, school, is there not travel and like the bus?
Right.
The bus comes
but I mean, like within the school day, it's pretty
regular. Okay.
But they just have a different perspective to punctuality.
Okay.
I think.
Okay.
And if you're a little late, it's okay. Whereas in this country, I think it's kind of rude or careless.
Yeah.
That can be a problem.
The starting stopping thing with the cars.
Yeah.
Is that everybody? Like that's just like a trend?
It's pretty well, especially men. Men are kind of aggressive drivers in Russia, in my experience.
Do you know why? Like that's just. Do you know why?
I mean, I don't want to paint Russian men with too broad a brush, but they, I mean, things in America are generally pretty predictable, but anyway, driving in Russia is not. So, I mean, I've seen, I don't know how many times cars pulled over on the sidewalk where people are like working on their cars. Not so much anymore. That's an older thing, but I have seen that many times in Russia, and I don't know if I've ever seen that in the United States, that kind of thing.
Yeah. I don't think I have either.
But the thing the Russians would always tell me, like, let's say you're crossing the street and here comes a car and it looks like it's like barreling down on you intentionally. The Russians would always tell me, don't worry, he's not going to hit you because it would do so much damage to his car and it would cost him a lot of money. So he's not gonna hurt you.
Okay, that's
not out of concern for you so much as his car, but it doesn't really matter. But anyway, I don't know if I answered your original question, but I think students, there are those little things, and then in the big picture, I think they were amazed, even though I tried to prepare them, but still you can't know until you get there, like just how old Russia is. And when you walk into a church that predates Columbus's arrival in the Western Hemisphere, like, I mean, it's astounding to realize that this country has had, Orthodox Christianity, for example, or some other element of its culture and history for way longer than this country has been in existence. That puts a lot of things in perspective. I think even though I try to prepare them for Russian hospitality, they're overwhelmed by how generous and giving Russians are with everything from food to you can take the shower while there's still hot water, and we'll take a cold shower, to here's the very best bed we have, you're going to sleep in it, even if that means kicking out our grandmother who's going to sleep on the floor. It doesn't matter. So, and also I think they, when you go to Russia, and that's true of any country, I think you very quickly realize that the preconceptions you had about the country and its people are worthless, really, because you asked in one of these pre-meeting questions about like my students' preconceptions, and every year at the beginning of Russian 1 I give kids a survey that says, like, give me 5 words that come to mind when you think of Russia, give me 5 names.
Did we do this?
Yeah, every class does this.
I'm sure, I don't remember. I think you
every class does this, and the words are always cold, bears, vodka, Putin, war, something like that. It's a very predictable list, and then they go there and realize that those are just
not
stereotypes that are either fed by sort of like cartoons or caricature-ish depictions of Russia or Russians or politics or the media or whatever, and that the average Russian on a daily basis is just a normal person who lives a normal life, just like America isn't all like cowboys and skyscrapers and rock stars. Like we're just regular people, and we care about regular people things, and so do Russians. So however, I don't think I think Russians outshine us in terms of hospitality tremendously. I think the average American is not as overwhelmingly gracious and giving to guests.
I mean, I see that in other cultures too, like in Indian culture, like Tamil culture. So that's the language I speak. It's South Indian. So there's like a separation between North Indian and South Indian. And South Indian tradition, I've just found to be, similar to Russian culture, just like overwhelmingly giving. So like when somebody comes into your house, you offer them food, you offer them water. And from what you've told me, honestly, Russian culture is definitely a little bit more giving than South Indian culture, but I kind of attributed that more to religion and like religion and the culture that the religion creates. And considering that Russia has so many different religions, do you think it kind of separated based on religion, or was this just a trend across?
I think it's pre-Christian, like pre-monotheistic in Russia. I think it's like that's one reason I think the communism as an idea was fairly successful for some time, that because there's this sort of little c communism or communalism maybe that's extremely important in Russian culture going back even before Christianity, because I think most Russians for most of history have been poor and lived very modestly and depend on one another. And so if somebody comes into your home, like traditionally if somebody comes into your home, they're allowed to walk in even if you're not there. So let's say 600 years ago, during the day you're probably working out in the fields, and if there's like a traveler, they can come into your house, and then there's like a bench near the door usually, and there's an idea that like you can stay there and take shelter and rest and maybe warm up, and you shouldn't then go more into the house and fool around with the personal items. But there's a space for you. It's almost like an ante-room. It's not a room, but it's an area. And then when they come home, they'll pretty much no questions asked make you tea and give you. The tradition is bread and salt, because bread is the most basic food that you would probably want, and then salt is probably the most expensive thing that people have to give, and it's showing you that we're going to give you what you need, but also we're not going to spare expense. And if you dip bread in salt, that's a nice refreshing snack, and everybody should be able to give you that. So
why do they want to show luxury?
I don't think it's showing luxury, but I think it's showing that we will give you the best thing we have.
Okay.
You know what I mean? So like it's like when I've stayed with families and they're like, we're going to give you the best bed we have and the best everything, because there are a couple reasons. One, it's the right thing to do. Two, we don't want to be seen as miserly or like we're holding something back. And then 3, if we don't treat you well, you could then go out and talk about us and tell people that we're not giving, or maybe even like put a curse on us or put the evil eye on us or something like that. And then we're being, then it's like there's the sword of Damocles hanging over us or something.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you know what I mean? If I overwhelm you with generosity, and then you can't possibly pay that back, that's great.
Yeah.
Because then I don't owe you something.
Yeah.
But in Russian culture, one of the worst things is to owe somebody something, and
Mm-hmm.
not just money, but like, if I've offended you and didn't get to apologize or make it up to you,
Mm-hmm.
and then you're out in the world, now you can tell people that I offended you, or you can like put a curse on me or something like that. And like, you're out there and I don't know.
Yeah.
And I can't control that.
Right.
So, so it's important just to give,
Mm-hmm.
to avoid being indebted in some fashion
Okay.
to people,
Okay.
because you don't want that kind of debt,
Right.
which again isn't usually monetary. You don't want that kind of debt out there lingering around, waiting to maybe pounce on you.
Yeah. Okay.
Anyway, I think those are reasons why this hospitality and giving
Mm-hmm.
are so predominant, and
Yeah.
I think Christianity in a lot of ways reinforced that.
Mm-hmm.
But I think Slavs had that in their culture. Anyway,
Mm-hmm.
I think another thing is that, like, in this country, we're very individualistic,
Mm-hmm.
and you're taught that you're special and you should go get what you want, and I hope that all your dreams come true and that kind of stuff. And that's
Right.
just not even a Slavic traditional way of thinking. Because to wish you well, to wish you all the best,
Mm-hmm,
like we
mm-hmm.
say in English,
Mm-hmm.
is like, first of all, where do you get off thinking that that's even possible? Like, why do I
Will you
want to put
get
in your
the best?
right? That like,
Oh.
who gets that? Nobody gets that. Like, what you really want is to not get the worst, right? You want to avoid the worst that life can give you. So if nothing is happening,
Mm-hmm.
that's awesome, because that means that nothing bad is happening.
Mm-hmm.
And the idea that something great would happen is like, that's
How can you?
like
Yeah.
winning the lottery. Like, good for you, but that's not realistic.
Mm.
And also, if you aspire to that, then that means that you think you're special and deserve better than other people. And if we're all poor and living in a sort of a communal environment, then you thinking you're special and deserve the best means that you sort of take up more room psychologically in the home or in the community than other people, and then that's
Could
bad.
you say it's humility?
That's bad for everybody.
Like being humble?
Yeah. Yeah, but I think humility is like, to me, humility is an antidote to pride. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah,
humility is something
yeah.
we teach because we know that our children are certainly capable of feeling like too big for their britches,
Yeah.
right? So we teach humility to try to counter that.
Yeah.
So I don't even think it's humility. I think it's just reality, which is
Okay.
just that we're all poor,
Mm-hmm.
traditionally.
Mm-hmm.
None of us have any political power or wealth or privilege.
Mm-hmm.
Again, this is a massive
Yeah.
generalization.
Yeah.
And so therefore, anyone who thinks that they do have that privilege or should or can aspire to it,
Mm-hmm.
like, why are you so special? Like, you know what I'm saying? You're
But
not
what if
special.
somebody's like a really good athlete or like just a really good student? Would you not say, "Oh, you're really good"? You're kind of just like,
No, because your parents aren't going to tell you that, because then you'll get a big head, and then you'll
Oh.
think you're full of yourself, and then first of all, no one else will want to be around you because you think you're so great, and second of all, that'll just set you up for failure, because the expectation is that life will deal you blows, right?
Mm-hmm.
You'll get sick, you'll get drafted into the army for 25 years, you'll get taken advantage of somehow by the landlord, since we're all serfs, or even later, in the Soviet regime, right? Anyone who stands out, that's risky,
"Oh, right.
So like, if you're excellent, and then people tell you you're excellent, then that means that you don't think that you should do what the Communist Party tells you to do.
But doesn't that create an inferiority complex for all Russians then?
Yeah.
So,
I think it does.
okay.
And I think that's partly why, to me, that's a cause of like a lot of international issues involving Russia and the West, or the Soviet Union and the West before that, is this, I think a lot of it is rooted in an inferiority complex, that Russia has been always sort of depicted as being like behind the West, right, for a lot of reasons that we can get into, but behind the West or inferior or whatever, and so like the Soviet Union was constantly competing. So that's why you ask about like being a great athlete or a great student. Those people in the Soviet era were promoted and nurtured because we want to compete with the West. Right? Like for a long time in its early days, the Soviet Union wasn't in the Olympics. They weren't in the World Cup. It was seen as a sort of a war-torn, backward nation. And then, especially after World War II, they were like, hey, we're as good as you guys, maybe even better, because we're moving the world towards socialism, which is where it's going anyway, according to Marx. And so we're actually more progressive than you are, and we want to show you that we're just as good at schooling, sciences, athletics, whatever.
So then at that point you had to nurture these kids, but then doesn't that break the culture of not promoting an ego?
Right, so that's a good question. So that's a really good question. So you do want those excellent people, but you also want to keep them in the Soviet period. You also want to keep them within the bounds set up by the Soviet regime. So you could be an excellent artist, musician, sculptor, scientist, athlete, but you also had to obey party dictates.
Okay.
And if you violated those boundaries, if you transgressed those boundaries, that was more of a bad thing than your excellence was a good thing, and so that ultimately could lead you to being punished.
Okay.
Which is why sometimes Soviet athletes would emigrate or defect because they were being held back. And like often, I think there was this notion in the Soviet sports system that it was all controlled by the party, and so in this country, if LeBron James is an excellent athlete, he can. There's free agency. He can play for whoever he wants. He has a lot of more control of his destiny. But in the Soviet system, you had to do what they told you. And if they wanted LeBron James to play point guard and he didn't want to play point guard, then they'd say, well, you're going to do what we tell you to do, or you're not going to play, right? Because they had total control over that.
Right.
Whereas in America, it's different.
Could you see that dictatorship, that control when you were in Russia, within the people? When you were interacting with people, was it ever oh, we can't do this, don't let them see us, or how it's painted in cartoons and stuff like that? Did you ever see that?
I don't think politically, although there is this thing in Russia that you don't have very loud personal conversations, or you don't air your personal stuff. So when Americans walk down the street, if you walk down the street with a friend, you're talking, gabbing, having fun, doing whatever. You don't really think about the people around you. But in Russia, you could walk past two people on the street who are talking and not hear them, because they've developed, I think it's from the Soviet regime, but probably even earlier, this notion that first of all, your personal affairs are personal, so we should just keep it between us. Nobody wants to hear you complaining about your problems, because they have other problems too, and maybe worse problems, and why are your problems so important? But also in the Soviet period anyway, it was dangerous, because you could be walking down the street complaining how there's no food in the shops, and the government has promised plenty, and they're not giving it to you, and you can't even get milk for your children, and then somebody hears that, and now you're complaining about the government, and that's dangerous, because you could be turned in. So there's a way of, that's a subtle...
You could be turned in for complaining?
In the Soviet times. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. If you were heard on a bus complaining that there's no food in the shops, or your boss at work is corrupt, or you're working in a factory but you're not really producing anything because you're not getting the raw materials, now you're insurrection. Right, you're airing grievances. You're saying the system isn't working.
Yeah.
And if you're having that conversation publicly,
what if other people feel like that, and then now you guys all feel like that together?
Right. And so that's provocative.
Yeah.
And so it was impressed upon people that you need to turn those people in. So it's a little bit like in this country, if you see something, say something, which sounds like a good idea, but that can be twisted into, if you hear anyone complaining about the status quo, you should report them.
Yeah.
So anyway, I don't know if I answered your question, but again, on a daily basis, no. In terms of dictatorship, no. But I will say one other interesting thing. In 1990, I was it was my only trip to the Soviet Union, and we had this tour guide in Moscow who was great. She was a young, hip woman, and she was super cool and really agreeable, easy to talk to and joke with. And she asked us questions about life in the United States and whatever. We were getting to know her, and she was really, really fun and friendly. And sometimes she would say, well, I'm supposed to take you to this thing, but that's boring. We're going to go over here. Or they want me to tell you that this, but that's not really true. We're gonna... And then she was supposed to take us to Kyiv, to Ukraine, on a second part of the trip. And then at the last second, she disappeared, and she was replaced by an older woman who was going to be our new tour guide, and she was much more like party line.
Oh,
and
wow.
so I don't know what happened,
Yeah.
but the sort of subtle message that we got was that young hip woman was not behaving in a way that the party wanted us to. They don't want Americans to hear that, well, we're supposed to tell you this, but that's not really true. Or let me tell you this behind the scenes. And they don't want that. And also the way she was like interacting with us, I think she was too chummy, and they wanted a more professional distance. So anyway, she
was this like an official tour? Oh, okay.
Yeah, because when you went to the Soviet Union in the Soviet period, you couldn't. I mean, today you could go to France and travel around by yourself. Yeah. You couldn't do that. It had to be under the auspices of the official Soviet travel agency, and they controlled your hotel stay and your transportation and all of your tours. And there was usually some kind of minder there that kind of like kept eyes on things. And if you had like wandered out of your hotel to go someplace, I think, depending on what time period you're talking about, I think there's a pretty good likelihood that you were being monitored.
Wow.
And if you maybe struck up a conversation with a Russian on the street and they invited you over to their house for dinner, which they probably wouldn't because it's a little dangerous, but if they did, somebody would be paying attention to that and trying to find out like what are they talking about. And because they wanted to control. That's why you had to get a visa to go to the Soviet Union, and you still do to go to Russia, because they want to control. They want to know who's there and where they're going and who they're with and when they're leaving and where they're staying and all that stuff.
Wow.
So anyway, so the tour guide we got to Ukraine was like not friendly, and she was super party line. And this gets back to your other question, because Ukraine is about the size of Texas, I think, or maybe a little bigger.
Yeah.
And so she kept comparing everything in Ukraine to Texas. Right. Again, this is the Cold War, so there's this competition between the United States and the Soviet Union,
the West,
and there was always competition between like, how many nuclear warheads do you have? How many bushels of grain do you produce a year? How many tons of iron do you smelt? I don't know, like all this, right? Because the Soviet system is supposed to be better and more productive and more advanced than the American system, and so she was comparing everything in Ukraine or in the Ukrainian Republic to everything in Texas. But that comparison, just because they're about the same size, doesn't make any sense. So she would compare like grain production in Ukraine to grain production in Texas. Well, like, I don't know a lot about Texas, but it's not. I don't think grain production is number one industry. Yeah. So we'd be like, well, you're comparing it to Texas. Why don't you compare it to, I don't know, Iowa or something? Which no. So you know what I'm saying? So like she would make all these comparisons. She'd say, oh, here we have this many universities. Over Texas only has this many universities. You know, and so everything was a competition, and she was not super friendly and nice and hip. So that was kind of an example of what you're talking about, where like you could see the party line being enforced, and she was playing her role in doing what she was supposed to do to make sure that Americans heard what they're supposed to hear. And also, this was a couple years after Chernobyl, and so we asked her about Chernobyl, like, hey, what's going, especially in Ukraine, what's going on here? Have you seen increased incidence of like health problems or cancers or, deformities in like animals? Because we heard about these things in the United States, and she'd say, no, that's all overblown in the United States. That's American propaganda. Everything's fine. It was a little accident. There's no problem. Like she minimized any bad news and played up any, things that she saw were positive. And so anyway, that's a roundabout way of answering to your question.
Is it still like that? The last few times you've went, is that still the idea?
No, I haven't really gotten a sense of any government propaganda.
Or when is the last time you did go?
2019.
2019, okay.
So it was before the
pandemic.
Before the pandemic, before the war started, but after really Russian incursion into Ukraine started in 2014. So I have been there a couple times since then. Okay. But that hasn't really figured into tours.
Was it competitive then? Or did you see a lot of...
like Russian-American competition? Not really.
Or Russian-Ukrainian competition?
No. But I've talked to a bunch of Russians around that, sort of like over the last 10 years, and almost unanimously they seem to support the party line, which is that Ukraine isn't a real country, that it's a Western creation, and the idea of an independent Ukraine is laughable. And of course, Ukraine should be part of Russia, or I mean, they're the same people. Is the notion that I've gotten from a variety of people. Some are more educated, some are less educated. Like it kind of doesn't really matter. Now some of this I wonder, because some of this has been like digital communication, so I wonder if they feel like
it's being monitored.
Maybe. But some of it was also personal conversations.
Okay.
And I think a lot of, just in my limited experience, I think a lot of Russians do feel that way and do believe.
Is there, like how in North Korea the government only puts out certain media, like access to certain media?
Yeah, so in recent, in the last 15 years or so, the government has taken more and more control of TV stations and the media, so that there's very little independent media left in Russia. So people.
So I mean, in that case, it could be that since propaganda is party line.
Yeah.
I mean, more and more people think that way too.
Yes. However, I've heard from several people in Russia that, like, if I said, well, I'm reading in the newspaper that this and this and this is happening, they're saying, their response is, that's your government's propaganda. And they're using the New York Times or the Washington Post or whatever to get out their agenda. And so you're just hearing what your government wants you to hear. So I believe that the United States has a freer press than Russia, so I think that they're wrong. But they think that, well, if you think that we're only being told what our government was doing, so are you. So you know what I'm saying? Like it's a kind of relativism. Yeah. Like, well, you see it from your perspective, and we see it from our perspective because we both have limited knowledge, maybe. Right. But they have tended, in my experience, to feel that we're also exposed to propaganda. That's what they tend to believe. Again, I don't know a million Russians, but yeah.
I mean, are you still in contact with
some
Russian?
People? Yeah.
Do you know what it's like there right now?
I think on a daily basis things are probably normal, although I do know, like this summer in Germany I talked to a woman who's Russian but is married a German, and she said that it can be hard to fly in and out of Russia and around Russia because there's all these threats from Ukrainian drones. Oh. And so sometimes air travel is irregular, and then there have been various attacks on infrastructure and other things. So I think.
I mean, also with the tariffs that Trump just put on Russia, is that stirring up?
I have no
idea. You don't know? Okay.
I really try to avoid, like, when my friends write to me, like, in emails about any topical issues, I do not engage. Okay. Because, first of all, I probably disagree with them. I'm not going to convince them of anything. They're not going to convince me of anything. And I don't want to create, like, a digital record of that's fair. Statements. Yeah. Because my fear is that someday I go to Russia, my phone gets searched at the border, and then they say, oh, we can see that you sent this email. I just don't want to put anything in digital writing.
If it was that risky, like even when you went to Russia during the Soviet period, if it was that risky and you took students, was that something that was on your mind?
I don't think it was risky. Like, it wasn't risky as a student in 1990.
Okay. But like, if they're willing to like search your phone,
I've at no point between my first trip in 1990 and my last trip in 2019 did I think that was going to happen. Like, I don't think that was really happening in that time frame. Okay. I think that's more been since 2022. Especially because now the U.S. State Department is telling Americans you really shouldn't go to Russia. You can't fly from the United States to Russia. You can't fly from a lot of countries to Russia. So, and I don't even know if Russia would give me a visa. Anyway, I don't think that risk existed when I took students or when I traveled as a student.
Was there any risk for you? No.
Just the normal risk of travel and going to another country. I mean, when you're in Moscow, you're in a big city. Yeah. And things can happen, like they could happen if you go to New York. Right. But maybe with the additional factor of the fact that, like, when I took kids to Russia, they stand out as foreigners. And so maybe you're kind of an easier target. And then also in this country, you probably have a better sense of maybe where in a city to go or not to go, or who not to talk to, because that person's clearly like unstable. I shouldn't talk to them.
Yeah.
Whereas in other countries, sometimes you can't read those cues and you
Yeah.
don't understand the lay of the land. And in theory, you could unwittingly put yourself in a more dangerous situation. But that's part of what I did before trips, is try to teach kids about that, and then also make sure that they were never alone.
Yeah.
And that when we were on these trips, they were always with their host siblings who were Russians, and so those kids knew, those kids were, and like I said, going back to the hospitality, the Russians would always, our hosts always wanted to make, they wanted to take the best care.
Right.
If anything happened to their guests,
Yeah.
they would be mortified,
Right.
and it would be awful. So they were usually, if anything, overly parental, like overly, too much oversight, a little bit.
Can I ask, what are some of the social cues that differ from here? Like, do you know any off the top of your head?
I mean,
Because I couldn't imagine it being very different. I feel like I could walk here and kind of know who not to talk to. And
I guess, but like, I think there's a lot more, just again, massive generalization. There's a lot more sort of public drunkenness in Russia.
Okay.
And then you'd see here. So you kind of have to have your eyes open for that. Also, somebody might see that you're a foreigner and start a conversation with you, and you have to know, I'm just not going to engage with that person. Like the summer on the Germany trip, our group was trying to get someplace, and some people who they didn't have bad intentions. They were just trying to sell something. Kind of glommed onto a couple of kids in our group and started conversations like, "Hey, what year were you born? Huh, that's interesting. Let me talk to you about this thing." And we're like, "Guys, keep moving.
Keep
like,
moving.
who cares
Yeah.
about that person? You don't care about that person, and we've got to get over there. Let's get, what I'm saying? So like, things like that I think you would know in America. Like, I'm not talking to that person giving a survey or asking for money, but in Russia or in any foreign country, you don't always know. And again, not that they necessarily mean ill. It's just, I don't really want to engage with that person.
I hesitate. So we've been to India a few times, and it's a similar vibe there too, because there's so many people. So sometimes somebody will be selling something to you on the street, and you kind of have to. You can't just say no and walk away. You kind of have to be polite.
Sure.
Because then they'll be like, "All right, let me take your bag," or something like, So I hesitate to just walk away in countries where I'm not familiar.
Yeah.
So.
In Russia, I think it's actually a little different. In Russia, sometimes you do need to be rude.
Oh, okay.
Because if you show any weakness or hesitation, depending on who we're talking about, that person, whether they're asking for money or maybe trying to take advantage of you or whatever, that gives them an in. You need to not engage, and if necessary, tell them to go to hell.
Okay.
Like, just move on.
Okay.
And don't worry about their feelings.
Yeah.
Is
Okay.
what I'm saying.
Okay.
The worst case scenario is you offend someone who just meant who was a good-natured person.
Yeah.
But more likely you're keeping yourself safe.
Yeah.
So I'd say that's. Years ago in the 90s, I would see children begging on the streets of St. Petersburg. And I saw them quite a bit. And one time I was waiting for somebody for a long time. They didn't show up or whatever, but I was on this one street corner for a long time waiting. And I saw these kids begging who I'd seen before. And I noticed they would there was when you're on a sidewalk and there are steps down to a shop that's below street level or something, they would go down in that little stairwell, rub dirt on their faces, and then wait for a mark to come by, somebody oh, that person will be good. And then they'd come up and start crying and look absolutely pathetic and miserable and beg for money. And then as soon as the person walked past, they'd turn it off. And then they'd kind of retreat back to the thing and just kind of wait.
Wow.
So it was a total scam.
Yeah.
And so,
But they were homeless.
They were probably living a tough life
Okay.
that I can't really understand.
Yeah, yeah.
But that doesn't mean I'd want to. I mean, you just don't want to. I mean, I guess you could give them some money. I don't know. But I just, the more you stop, especially stopping, or if somebody asks you what time it is, you don't look at your watch. Because then A, you're distracted, and B, then they get to see what kind of watch you have, and maybe I'd like to steal that.
Oh.
So
is this something you're saying in general?
Yeah, in general. I would do this in New York.
Okay.
If someone asks me what time it is, I just tell them the first time that comes to mind, and maybe it's right, maybe it's wrong. Who cares? Nobody needs to know what. Everyone knows what time it is.
Yeah.
You all have phones.
Yeah.
And so, so just that kind of street smarts thing. I'm not gonna open myself up to a random person on the street.
Okay.
Which kind of goes goes against a lot
For
of
some
things I would
reason,
say.
when you mentioned the hospitality thing,
Yeah.
it kind of just gave me the impression that, like, the meanness that comes from America that you see, like robbers, like criminals, I just kind of assumed that there weren't as many.
In Russia?
Yeah.
Oh no, certainly there are.
Yeah, yeah.
There are bad people.
Okay.
I mean, I think a lot. In my experience, a lot of it comes from drunkenness. Like I've had problems with like drunken guys who come up to you on the street and start talking about who knows what or harassing you for whatever, and you just like once I was with some Russian friends and this drunk guy came up and was like really aggressive, and one guy I was with pulled out like pepper spray and just sprayed the guy in the face, which neutralized him, and it also actually got all over the rest of us. And that was, but we were able to kind of get away from him. Yeah. Like, I mean, I don't know. I just think in any foreign country, you have to just be on guard.
You gotta be on edge. Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah.
I was also gonna ask you about athletics in Russia. So I think we've talked a little bit about this, but like wrestling, UFC, Islam Makhachev, Khabib. I'm not sure if you're familiar with these
I've
people.
heard these names.
Okay,
I have no idea how popular that is in Russia. I would guess probably somewhat.
Yeah.
I don't think, just from what I can tell in Russia, sports is not as popular or as much in people's thinking as it is here.
What's a career aspiration? Like what, like here kids think of like, oh, I want to go be a professional athlete. Oh, I'm going to be a pilot. Like if they're not...
In my limited experience, that's not a thing.
Oh.
I mean, as far as like I'm sure if I took 50 American kids off the street of any city, a huge portion of them would probably want to be LeBron James, right? Probably, or Patrick Mahomes or something. I don't know. I mean, I haven't talked to many hundreds of Russian children, but I just would think that that's I don't know. It's just I don't think it's as much on their radar as it is here. In the old Soviet system, like good athletes were identified and brought into like the state sports system where they're going to develop. It's almost like travel soccer, but bigger and controlled, run by the government. And so they would identify that talent in hockey or soccer or pole vaulting or whatever. And typically they would go to Moscow and then be trained and put in a special school there.
Are you talking about school sports? Like...
Yeah, except there aren't really school sports. I think it's this level of national development of talent. So like that's why if you look in like tennis or hockey or anything where like Russian athletes are successful internationally, like in Wimbledon or something, often their hometown is Moscow because they've been, even today, even post-Soviet, because they've been brought to Moscow to be trained under the state system, whereas an American tennis player could be from anywhere, like probably California or Florida, but that's not because of the government, that's just because of maybe where tennis is more popular and there's better competition. But in Russia, I still think like a lot of those internationally successful athletes are state trained.
How do they identify those people to bring them to Moscow?
Well, I don't know.
You don't
I don't know. Okay. But I will tell you that like schools, like in this country, your high school has sports teams, and you know, those teams' successes are celebrated and they're kind of a big deal. I don't think that's true.
Okay.
I think that's generally not true in much of Europe.
Okay.
Like I think most of the good athletes and athletic team competition is developed sort of outside the school system.
Okay.
Often by clubs, you know, like Real Madrid or Bayern Munich. The summer I was in Germany and we went to Bayern Munich's basketball teams. They played in the championship of the German basketball league. So like, I think if you're Messi, you know, or a really good, or Jokic, like a really good basketball or soccer, like team sports player, you're probably, in much of Europe, and I think probably Russia, you're identified by these clubs and brought into like Real Madrid has like teams for, you know, almost like Richmond United, teams for teenagers. Yeah. And even like younger adolescents. Anyway, I think that's where that's done. But to be honest, I don't know that much about it.
Okay, that's fair.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to just get a feel for the dynamic of the system there. But is there school spirit? Is there pride in where like communities in Russia, or is it again humility, like fit in?
I mean, I think there is, but I don't think it's based on schools so much. Like, I think schools are more academic institutions and less, and maybe social institutions, but not really athletically. Like, I don't know, school spirit, I don't know. So
It's not, okay.
you don't see people walking around wearing T-shirts from their high schools much, you know. I don't know. But again, I haven't been there in 6 years. But I think there's St. Petersburg, Leningrad has a great sense of like civic pride because the city survived the siege, the 900-day siege by the Nazis, and so Leningrad's got St. Petersburg has this particular persona of of that history of the city that is part of the Soviet Union and Russian history, but also a little bit separate. Like, we're a little special. Yeah. Each city traditionally, like Russia a long time ago, was made up of a bunch of principalities, so they were kind of like semi-independent. This is going way back over 600 years, but there is that sense of of local or regional identity. And often that city or that oblast, that region has like a symbol, like a coat of arms, or like a bear or a deer or some sort of like totemic animal that's like their sense of identity. I don't know, like in Rostov-na-Donu, the city was occupied twice by the Nazis. So like that sense of survival of Nazi occupation kind of gives the city a certain common legacy. Okay. But I don't think that has much to do with like school spirit. I think it's like city identity. I think kind of like in this country, the way, I don't know, maybe New Orleans or Boston. Yeah. Certainly New York.
I'd say every state itself has its own pride.
Yeah, typically. Some more than others. Like Texas obviously has a big sense of like, we're Texans and that's who we are.
I would say if you go I used to be a very anti-Richmond person, but then as you go outside and talk to people, they're very, oh yeah, Richmond's a great city. Yeah. And like, if you go to, like, I visited Boston a few times, and it's like a lot of like, oh, I love Boston.
Yeah.
Like,
I think Boston's got a lot of pride.
Yeah. I mean, I can't think of a place that there wouldn't be.
I guess so.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
It's like when you hear someone travels and they go to a country or something that they've never been to, and they say, oh, these people, they're very proud people. Like, who's not proud?
Yeah.
Like, what people are like, you know what? We're Polish and we're ashamed
we hate
of
it. Yeah.
Like, nobody says that.
Nobody says that.
Nobody says our culture is terrible.
Yeah.
Or I hate all of our food and our rituals. Like, it's,
Yeah.
So, anyway.
So I also wanted to kind of get into why you picked Russian. Because, I mean, I definitely understand the value of languages, but I didn't really think of Russian to be like like one that I would point out and be like, oh, I really want to learn that, until I learned it. Okay. I mean, the ones you think of are like Spanish, French, because those are the ones you teach.
It's not a common choice.
Right. Yeah. So why did you get into it?
Well, I took French throughout high school, and then I planned to continue it in college at Duke University. But I remember I called the head of the French department in the spring of my senior year of high school and said, I'm in AP French and I'd like to continue French at Duke. And the way I remember it is that he told me, we really don't have any classes for you. Like, he found out kind of where I was in the track and said, we don't have anything for you, which to me sounds insane now. Like, if I'm coming in AP, don't you have like higher level classes, conversation classes, literature, politics, like translation?
We offer literature here.
Sure. I mean, there's a wide range of things you could do to develop those skills, but he told me that, I don't know. Anyway, that's my memory of that conversation. So I just thought, well, I guess I'll have to pick something else. And for some reason, just either Russian or Japanese popped into my head. I don't know why. I guess I'd already taken Spanish in middle school. I wasn't interested in Spanish. And I don't know what that says about me that Russian or Japanese popped into my brain, but they did. And then I thought, well, Japanese seems a little too foreign. Like, I didn't know anything about Japan. I had no connection to Japan. Yeah. I had no connection to Russia, really, except some of my ancestors lived in the Russian Empire, but we're not ethnically Slavs or Russians, so it didn't feel personal. So it was really kind of on a whim. And then, so freshman year, I took Russian 1, and my professor was just really engaging, very stimulating, got me really excited about the language, the culture, the music, the history, everything. And then I went to Russia, to the Soviet Union after my sophomore year, and that I was just hooked because I fell in love with the architecture and the people and the hospitality, and it was so interesting to me because it was this world of opposites. It kind of like what I said before, like nothing works out, and yet anything is possible.
Yeah.
So that's an interesting dynamic. And so anyway, so that I loved it, and then kept taking it in college, and then always thought I was going to go to law school for some reason. And then graduation weekend from college, realized I don't want to go to law school. I took what amounted to pre-law classes, a few of them, and didn't like them. I wasn't really interested in the subject matter. I didn't like the people, frankly. Like, I didn't want to be around those people. And I just really loved Russian, and I thought I was good at it. And so I stayed at Duke for 2 years of grad school in Russian literature. And then I went to UVA to continue studying Russian literature and also folklore, Slavic folklore at UVA, to work on my PhD, which I never finished, as you know.
Actually, I don't remember this.
I finished my coursework and took the exams and was working on my dissertation for about 2 years and then gave up.
Okay.
So, but
was your PhD on like a research topic?
yeah, it was in Slavic literature. It was focusing on Dostoevsky.
Okay.
But as it went along, so as I was working on my dissertation, I had left UVA because I had finished the coursework, and I was living in Richmond, and I started teaching part-time at the governor's school and gradually a couple other schools. So over 3 years, I cobbled together more and more part-time gigs, and I realized I really loved teaching high school students.
Yeah.
I don't really care so much. I lost interest in my dissertation, frankly. I don't think it was that good. And I realized the jobs that would require a PhD aren't jobs that I want. I don't really want to be a professor.
Yeah.
College students are less interesting to me.
Yeah.
High school students are much more exciting. So,
I don't get that.
You don't get that?
You don't think college students are more exciting?
They're like little adults. Adults are not interesting.
But that's like their first sight of freedom. So like, what are they going to do with that first sight of freedom?
I'll tell you what they're going to do. They're going to go to parties and not care so much about school. That's what they're going to do.
That's fair.
I mean,
they're pretty predictable.
As a TA, I had taught at UVA, so I had 2.5 years of experience in the classroom with college students. And then also, one of my part-time gigs was a adjunct position at the University of Richmond, teaching. I taught a language class, I taught a lit class, and those experiences were all great.
Yeah.
But I just didn't identify or connect as much with college students who, again, are like mini adults who are kind of doing their own thing. They're taking classes, but then they're moving on to a very different life. They live in apartments and they're whatever, and they have cars.
Yeah.
High school students, they show up here at like 14.
Yeah.
They don't know anything.
Yeah.
They're little, like, newborn little chicks who are barely formed, and especially when they come into Maggie Walker, they're suddenly plopped into this kind of a big building with 10 languages, and there's a lot to absorb, and they don't know what they want or what they're good at yet in a lot of cases. And so for me, that's exciting to show them that, like, this language, which has a reputation for being like super hard and inscrutable and what's this alphabet, actually is quite understandable. And the culture, which seems scary and vodka and bears and cold, is actually quite fascinating and exciting and fun, and the food is delicious despite what you've heard. And let me kind of demystify that.
Yeah.
And to watch a 14 or 15 or 16-year-old discover this whole world of Slavic, everything Slavic out there, and also see them kind of grow and become empowered, that like, wow, I can really do this, and start to understand it, and then see them like do their own research and come back and find out like, ooh, I was interested in this word, and I found out it's connected to this French word that I learned in middle school, and I bet whatever, or politics or history or whatever happens to be, is so much more exciting.
Did it ever demotivate you or like push you away from teaching when a kid wasn't interested?
No. Because there are always plenty of kids in the room who are.
That aren't. Okay.
And also, Russian classes are pretty self-selecting. Like, nobody defaults into a Russian class.
Yeah.
There are 10 languages here, and Russian isn't the class you take when you don't care about it.
Yeah.
So they typically are motivated. That's never been a problem. Like kids who are not interested.
I mean, I asked that question because I feel like teaching for me, especially if it was to motivate students and like pass on something that a professor passed on to me. I feel like I would be a little demotivated if a bunch of students were not paying attention, or like they weren't as interested as I was.
Right.
You know?
I mean, that's certainly possible because I am super interested in this stuff.
Yeah,
and not everyone matches that, but like, it's not like a 9th or 10th grade English or history class that's part of the core curriculum, and maybe you don't care about history, and so that would be, that's a little different. But again, people choose Russian, so there's usually some level of interest or curiosity or a family connection or something.
Right.
That hasn't been a problem for me.
All right. My last question to you. Why Duke's basketball?
I became a Duke basketball fan when I enrolled at Duke.
Okay.
And I was never really a college basketball fan before then. I was more college football, which I still love. But when you're at Duke, it just becomes, it's just it's in the water. And also I was in the marching band.
Oh, really?
For football games, which
what
became
instrument?
Bass drum.
Okay.
Which became the pep band for basketball games. And so we went to all the games, and I'm a big sports guy, and I really like being part of a community. Like, I like the fact that at Duke, almost everybody lives on campus.
Yeah.
People wear Duke stuff. Like, I remember people would come and visit, and this is the late 80s, early 90s, but people, friends would come visit you from other schools, and they'd always remark on, like, everyone here's wearing Duke stuff.
Yeah.
Like, they would go to whatever school, and kids would wear a variety of things, like from schools from a friend goes to, or they're from another part of they're from Michigan, so they're wearing Michigan stuff, but they're going to school in Pennsylvania, whatever. But at Duke, everyone wore Duke stuff because there's such a real strong sense of identity, and when people live on campus and live together, and it's not a big school, it's only about 6,000 undergraduates, so you see people, you walk across the quad, you see people so
were your friends ever from UNC? No.
But one guy I was good friends with, his girlfriend went to Carolina.
Oh, really?
And a lot of us thought that was like, we don't
No.
that was a kind of a sore point. But they're married and seem to be very happy, so I'm happy for him. But and I don't hate people from Carolina. I just hate the teams.
Okay.
So, but anyway, my point is, I like belonging to a community with an identity and something. Like, I've got to care about it. Like, that's partly why I love teaching at a high school, because I care about the school and the community and the colors and the teams and the relationships with parents and students and alumni and colleagues. And I really wouldn't be happy working in a job like a faceless corporation or a job where it's just punching a clock. Like, I couldn't tolerate that. So I want a sense of, like, shared sense of identity with the place where I work in my community, and Duke really had that, and basketball is sort of the most obvious manifestation of that. There are others, but that was a big one. And then when they're good, which they were while I was there, that's just exciting and fun.
Honestly, they're still really, really
They're
good.
still good.
Yeah.
But we got to travel to, being in the pep band meant that we traveled to tournaments and national championships and things like that. So that was really, I was there at a very, very good time.
Okay. I didn't know that you were on the marching band, so I kind of just thought your Duke, you liking Duke was just kind of because you went there, but...
I mean, that's part of it, but being in the marching band makes you feel like you're part of the thing.
Definitely.
So I always feel like we won a national championship, right? Not they.
Yeah.
Because you feel like you're part of it.
Yeah.
Which
Did you ever play?
No.
No.
Not that well. No.
Okay, about...
Not even in high school.
Really?
Yeah, because I grew up playing piano. I mean, I studied piano from second grade through college. So, and there was a point and I played youth sports growing up, but then there was a point in high school where I realized I had to choose between continuing my piano lessons or joining the baseball team, which meant practice every day after school when you would otherwise be. And I chose piano.
Okay.
Because I was better at it.
Yeah.
And I felt like it would be better for my life long term than being on the baseball team, which would be fun, but like, I'm not going to go to college and play baseball, but I can becoming a better piano player, that's a skill that I can use my whole life.
Yeah.
So.
Mine, I was choosing between trumpet and softball, and I picked softball.
All
so
right.
I had a similar...
I mean, it just depends what you love.
Yeah.
If you love softball, and don't love the trumpet as much,
Yeah.
then you should do softball.
Well, to be fair, I love the trumpet. It's just
Okay.
I only had 2 years with it, or
Yeah.
3 years with it, because I played. No, actually, I only played 6th grade and 8th grade because middle school was my COVID year, so I
Oh.
didn't really play in 7th grade.
Okay.
Or I did, but it was at home, and
Right.
I wasn't allowed to play when my parents had meetings, so
Yeah,
it
yeah.
didn't work out.
I don't think so.
Yeah, but I gave that up. But I still have it at home, so every once in a while I'll pick it up and play a C and then put it back down.
You can always play trumpet later in life if
Yes.
you want.
Yes.
Yeah.
I've been really into jazz, so I'm gonna
Oh.
pick it back up.
Nice.
Yeah.
You should. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you, Mr. Wright. Really
You're
appreciate
welcome.
your time.
You're welcome. I hope it helps, and I hope I stayed
Yes.
in the frame.
No, I think you did.
Okay.
I've been taking long, I've been writing songs, I've been feeling gone, don't know what you want. You probably prone to stay all night, I'm probably prone to play.